you going there, peeps? Phil here from MTG, Kiwi Philosophy here, bringing you yet another deck tech. Guild Allegiance is out, and it's time for some new cards, some new strategies, and new theories. So here we go. This is my latest deck, Orzhov. Welcome to Value Town. Okay, so let's kick it off with our build arounds. 4 copies of Pitiless Pontiff, 3 copies of Divine Visitation, and 3 copies of Teysa Karlov. Pitiless, pretty damn good. A 2-drop for 2/2, you can pay 1, sacrifice a creature, it gets Death Touch and Indestructible. It's fantastic. So there's an outlet to be able to sack, to be able to get us some tokens somehow. Okay, and then we've got the Divine Visitation to make sure those tokens are getting turned into something a little bit more value and more powerful, and that's going to be great for us. And of course, with Karlov in play, all those tokens, powerful flying 4/4 angels with lifelink is going to be great for us. And of course, Karlov's ability to be able to double triggers that are on the stack is going to be great for us. So whenever we can sack a creature and we can get some value of it dying, that's really going to help us advance the board and make the deck super powerful with Divine Visitation in play. So that's going to be the key. Okay, well let's get into it. Let's go from our low curve into our high curve and our combos. Okay, with the Pitiless Pontiff, what we really want to do is have creatures we can value, sacrifice, and at a low cost. So we're going to go with 4 copies of Doomed Dissenter and 4 copies of Martyr of Dusk. Now the Doomed Dissenter is fantastic, sacrificing this creature, and then across, when it dies, we're going to be able to get those 2/2 zombies, triggers twice with Karlov, and then we got 2/2 zombies, and then of course if we have the Divine Visitation, we do have angels, which is fantastic. And on top of that, we have a Death Touch Indestructible creature as well. Martyr of Dusk, same again. We're going to get that double trigger if we have the combination in play. So it's really cool being able to have copies of this. Now the thing that we really need to think about now is how we get recursion. How do we return this stuff once we've sacrificed it and get value from it even more? And how we do that? 4 copies of Ajani, Adversary of Tyrants. It's fantastic value. The small creatures can get bigger with the plus counters, and when they get sacked, we can return them from the graveyard to the battlefield, which is fantastic. Because those 2-drop creatures are fantastic. Even if they get rid of Pitiless, it's going to be awesome because we can return it. And then on top of that, once again, if we can Ajani to ulti, then we're going to be looking at some serious damage with Divine Visitation. Now, if we're getting into a little bit of a sticky situation, we are going to need some removal. So the removal I've gone with is 3 copies of Kaya's Wrath, 3 copies of Profane Processions, and 4 copies of Settle the Wreckage. Now, the Wrath is fantastic. Of course, destroying creatures that we control that have value when they die, we get creatures back. It means that we're going to have a board wipe that's then going to trigger us to have a more powerful board state, which is going to be fantastic, along with life gain. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It is, of course, a little bit janky with the double white, double black, and sorcery speed, but it is still fantastic. But that's also why we have Settle the Wreckage in here. Settle the Wreckage, instant speed, being able to exile opponents' creatures that attack us are also fantastic. And Profane Processions is also great. It's a double-edged sword, so we can basically get it into play reasonably early, and we can remove our opponent's creatures, or if we're also in a little bit of trouble, but we do have plenty of land, we could also exile one of our own creatures to protect it so we can recast it once we've flipped the Profane Procession. Alright, well, let's move on to the next card. Okay, so it's time for the last card in the main deck, and we want to go with something a little bit chunky so we have a little bit more value as well. And that is 4 copies of Light of the Legion. Light of the Legion's a fantastic angel with flying and mentor, and also the triggered ability when it dies, putting a +1 counter on our creatures that are white. Now all of our creatures are white apart from the Doomed Dissenter, but nonetheless it's still double value if we have Karlov in play, because we're going to get 2 +1 counters for each of those creatures. And plus, the mentor trigger is also going to be an easy target. We just look at doing the Doomed Dissenter or anything else we've got in play. Alright, that's the main deck. Now let's talk about the lands and our sideboard. And so with our lands, we've decided to go with 4 copies of Godless Shrine, 4 copies of Isolated Chapel, 2 copies of Memorial to Folly, and 2 copies of Memorial to Glory. So yes, it can be a little bit janky. I mean, you can change things out for normal lands if you want the basics to come into play so we don't have this tap land problem. But in saying that, the value we get from them is very important. Memorial to Folly, being able to return creatures from our graveyard to our hand is going to be fantastic. And of course, Memorial to Glory, being able to sack it and put those token creatures, being able to transform them with the Divine Visitation is also very good value. In our sideboard, we're going with 3 copies of Spinal Centipede, 3 copies of Elenda, Dusk, and those are our 2 creatures we're going with. So the Spinal Centipede, once again, is just there so that we can buff our creatures a little bit when the creature dies. If we have Elenda in play, then it's also going to help us trigger more stuff from Divine Visitation and also life gain as well, which is very helpful. Elenda is great too because sacking those creatures means we can get counters on her, which is great again. So Elenda is really valuable. I mean, I would possibly even think about swapping out Elenda for the Light of the Legion and having that extra value. And I think that's really going to help us go wide once we've got the Visitation to play. Now let's look at the other cards in our sideboard. And we're going with 3 copies of Mortify, 3 copies of Legion's Landing, and 3 copies of Costly Plunder. Now, Mortify is there because we want to be able to protect it at instant speed from creatures or enchantments. So if someone's using an Exelon's Binding, we can bring this in, we can double protect it, and that's going to really help us. Another way you could do that, you don't want to use Mortify, you could just put a binding in there to bind the binding and then shut it down in one shot. And the problem is that with Exelon's Binding, if your opponent's playing it as well, it's more or less a Mexican standoff, and whoever plays the first one, it's really going to regret it. Now, Legion's Landing is also a fantastic card. It's great for early play. Get those creatures into play. We can be a little bit more aggressive in the early game and get it flipped so that we can have the land that's going to be able to produce us 1/1 creatures that can obviously transform with Divine Visitation into the 4/4 Flying Angels. Costly Plunder, that's just an additional sack outlet for us. Then we should get value from it and fill our hands up even more. I mean, of course, being able to return creatures from the graveyard with Ajani and then sacking with Costly Plunder is also another way to get value. Okay, well, I'm Phil from MTG Kiwi Philosophy. I hope you've liked this deck. Welcome to Value Town, Orzhov. I'll catch you on the flip side. Ciao.